Welcome back to Creative Live, and this is Recording Rock Vocals with Andrew Wade. I'm your host, Tony, and this is the beautiful, blushing Susan Roderick
Why,
here.
thank you, Tony.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us as well out there. Basically, just wanted to make sure that if you are just joining us, that you join the chat rooms. It's basically a little green link below the viewer window that you're looking at, and get into the conversation with us. We have a lot of awesome personalities in there that are asking questions that you might actually be able to answer. Also, make sure to hashtag audio live if you're on Twitter. Keep in the conversation. But with that said, let's take it away, Andrew.
All right, awesome. Vocal effects, and then we're gonna get into mixing preparation. All right. There's definitely a few vocal effects that I get requests for all the time whenever I'm mixing other people's bands. We're gonna be in the session reassemble. All right. So when to use vocal effects? Now, I think with anything else, when you're doing recording or writing a song, you want to do it with purpose. You don't want to just put random effects everywhere. And these are some of the reasons that you keep in mind to actually use vocal effects. So maybe sometimes you'll have a vocal and it's getting tired. Maybe for whatever reason the melody is just kind of repetitious. And it's still good, but sometimes you want it to be repetitious, but still have some different element. Sometimes you can put a vocal effect on just to spice it up a little bit. Excitement, movement, just make things more interesting sometimes. Clarity and definition. This is, especially in the more complex vocal arrangements, sometimes it's great to have maybe a lo-fi vocal in the midst of a bunch of stuff that's going on, and that one lo-fi vocal or distorted effect will kind of cut through everything else, and you'll be able to hear it plus everything else, and it's an effect, but it still kind of helps you with the clarity and definition of the part. Sometimes you can add texture. There's, if anybody knows about convolution reverb, you can do some really crazy things with different, actually don't have an example of this, but there are textures that you can almost make with reverbs and stuff like that. Not just an ambience, which is the next one. Ambience or moodiness. Sometimes a song lacks, the next one, character. You might just have a vocal, a guitar, a bass, and drums, and that's it. And sometimes you don't want to do keyboards or anything like that. You just want to keep it pretty raw. But sometimes after 10 songs of that, it might, especially in today's day and age where like everything has synths in it and stuff, a way that you can have an edge on that is to use these vocal effects. So you can make an overall mood to a song, maybe keep a weird effect on the main vocal the whole time. So those are some reasons that you actually use vocal effects, not just random stuff. So let's get into this. These are the different effects that I'm going to demonstrate. This may be kind of a short segment, and we might jump into mixing a little bit, just so you guys are aware. But there's a lot in mixing that I want to cover. I just want to make sure that we get everything talked about today. So it's fine. Fine with me. It's fine with you. All right, first one, probably one of the most popular effects, and I use this on purpose here in this song Reassemble. Let me just play it for you. It's a reverse reverb. So you can hear that vocal swelling in before the part. So what that's just done is help you anticipate that there's a change coming. So there's a reason that I put that in there. If I don't have that in there, you may not know when the part is going to end or what to expect. So let me just show you how the kind of right and wrong way to do this, because it's sometimes can be tricky. I'll just show you the best way that I've found to actually do this. So I usually end up using the, this looks different than 9. This is the reverb that comes with Pro Tools. It's called Deverb. There's a bunch of different ones that you can use. Waves makes some really good reverbs. Our Verb is a good one. What is another one? True Verb is another good one. Altiverb is another good one. So I'm just going to show you how to make this effect. So what I actually did for this very specific one, I'm going to show you this in a couple different techniques. So I'll take the regular vocal, and I usually, oops, just so there's no pops or clicks, I'll just fade. I'll just take a chunk of the first vocal or the vocal that I want the reverb to swell into. So I'll just take a chunk. Oh, that's different. Okay, so that's all it is. And then for some of these, it's really easy to do like way too long of a reverb. Now, I'm probably going to put this around 2 or 3 seconds for this particular effect. Oh, here we go. Let's see. There's a reverse button. Oh man, sorry guys, I don't have 10, but there's a reverse button here. Well, that's cool, but not every reverb has a reverse button, but that's awesome. So if you have 10, you can do that. So that's really cool. Now, whenever I do this, I'll have, let's just render this. And then you literally just, oops. You'll literally just reverse it. And then what you want to do is cut off the part that is not the reverb. So you can hear it kind of come in right there. That's the part that you kind of want to just cut off, because that's where the real vocal would come in. Oops. Oops. And then usually, because the reverb will probably be kind of quiet, I'll just normalize it. What normalizing does, it just turns it up to the maximum volume without having it peak. So, I mean, that's basically it for reverse reverb. I do want to show it to you in a more difficult situation, though, really. So, it's a cool little lead-in trick there. But sometimes your first vocal isn't so simple. Like that one is just a long held out single note. So that one is really easy. Sometimes the first vocal is kind of maybe a quick vocal. And that's when it gets a little bit more tricky to make sound good or sound correct. So this here is, okay, I can just take this back. I'm just putting these back to the original edited vocal. So it would be cool if we could hear, actually, no, that one I don't care about. Let's go to the second one. Here we go. Okay, this is a great spot. So at the end of this chorus, Now this is like kind of almost helping the flow and structure of the song, and that's what I'm keeping in mind whenever I'm making these choices. So we're coming out of the chorus. So that kind of came in a weird spot. You might not expect a vocal to come in there, but if you do have something that's helping you anticipate that a vocal is coming in, you may not be so surprised, and you may feel better about the song as the way it flows. So you'll take a way smaller chunk. These don't have to be. So that first word is my, and I'm actually excited to do this right in front of you because this may or may not work correctly, and I just want to show you that you got to kind of mess with a few things to make sure that stuff is correct. So let's go back to our D verb. Let's see, where are the... Not too long. If the reverb is too long, it'll just, I don't know, it tends to sound kind of weird if it gets too long. Okay, just gonna, that plugin just reverses it. That's all it does. I'm sure whatever program you're using has some kind of plugin that'll reverse it. And I usually put it on a different track, not the same track that the vocal is on. So. Okay, so that one we could not even hear. That one's kind of subtle, but I think that works for the demonstration at least. So it just kind of shows you here comes something, just so you're not getting blindsided for no reason. All right, since we're talking about reverb really quick, something that I like to do is this is going from a pretty extreme part into like a really quiet part. So sometimes, like if you don't have so it's kind of awkward, like it just is cutting off. So sometimes people might come to this and say, well, I just need to maybe put more reverb on the main vocal. But what you actually want to do is make a special situation for each part. We were actually talking about guitar stuff, me and Cameron, earlier, and he brought up sometimes there'll be a guitar part that just comes in the song where you just hear the guitar part by itself, and sometimes you might want to change the tone just for that one little spot so it sounds good. So that's the way you want to think of the song. Like you don't want to just throw an effect on and it's just like, oh, well, that should cover it all. You know what I mean? It's just like each part of the song needs to feel right. And sometimes you need to do these little things to make sure that it flows. So all this literally is I took the last word and put reverb on it, but I did it like this, so I processed it. And it turned it up pretty long. I don't know, 10 seconds, something like that. So that's just a cool thing I do. You can do that with delay also, but anytime I do those effects, it's easier to actually print them. You can automate, but that kind of gets tricky, and if you send it to someone else to be mixed, those things get lost. So it's important to have those actually in the session instead of just relying on a plugin to be automated. Okay, some invaluable effects. Let's get into screaming distortion. I know a lot of people have questions about that. There are a few different kinds of distortion. Now, I don't always use a distortion, but some vocalists need it. Some vocalists, like when I would use a distortion, I would do it because maybe they maybe, for instance, you did track one vocal and it didn't come out very thick. You didn't have time, they lost their voice, etc., etc. So when I am putting distortion on a track, it is dead first in the chain. It's before compression, before EQ, before anything else. So there's a few distortions I like. One of them comes with Pro Tools. Sorry for the non-Pro Tools users, but I'll also show you one that comes with a different pack that you can get. This one is just made by Digizine or Avid or Air, whatever, I don't know. It comes with Pro Tools. I'll just show you a preset, basically, that I use. So this is what it sounds like when you first put it on. Like sauce, turn beneath the wave. Little extreme. So you can mix it. Like sauce, turn beneath the wave. But it still is kind of staticky. And what you want from this distortion is maybe not that you notice that there's distortion, but a fullness added to your vocal. So what do? What's really cool about this is it has, let's turn it all the way back to distortion completely. So let's listen to this. Like sauce, turn beneath the wave. It has a high cut built in, so it gets rid of that fizziness. Let's activate that as we play it back. Like sauce, turn beneath the waves. So when you do have it in there, it's not just a bunch of high-end fuzz, it's kind of like a thicker mid-range. Like sauce, turn beneath the waves, a silent victim of the depths. So you can hear it just kind of adds that body. On Jeremy here specifically, I don't think I've ever used distortion on his vocal because he's fine without it, but sometimes you have to add that stuff. And sometimes bands like that even if it doesn't actually need to be there. Sometimes I like it. Sauce, turn beneath the waves, a silent victim of the depths. Cast aside, I'm scrambling to catch life. I can't find my way out, so condescending. So, and just mix that to your preference so it's like not too much, but it's still adding the character that you want. You can mess with these other things in here. I mean, this is just specific to this one plugin. There's different, the pre-shape changes the sound. Like sauce, turn beneath the waves, a silent victim. Like sauce, turn beneath the waves, a silent victim of the... So, what I'm hearing here is when it's completely all the way to the left, it's kind of mid-scooped, and then all the way to the right sounds a little more full-bodied. Like sauce, turn beneath the waves, a silent victim of the depths. So you would adjust something like this according to what you're lacking, what you're missing, what you want to add. You don't want to just randomly put this stuff on here, especially when you're trying to use it to enhance something, not just a special effect. So that could actually be a mixing tool also. There is another distortion, and it kind of is more of an effect. I want to talk about the Waves. Where are you, Waves? The Waves one knob bundle is really awesome, really fast, and I use it all the time for certain effects. Turn beneath the waves, a silent victim. This one is kind of like a lo-fi plus distortion, but when you want this type of effect, this is like, they nailed it, I think. Turn beneath the waves, a silent victim of the depths. And even if you wanted to, you could take one vocal and put it on it and take the other one and not. Like sauce, turn beneath the waves, a silent victim of the depths. So cast aside. You still have that grittiness in there, but you also still have clarity. And that's another thing to keep in mind when you're using these. In the mix, you want to hear those S's and the pronunciation. Usually, you don't want it to just sound like a jumbled mess of vocals where people have no idea what is going on. So sometimes it is cool to mix in a dry signal with something like that. Another really awesome tool that I use, and this is an effect that I help with transitions all the time. and it's filter sweeps. And Waves does this very well with their one knob filter. I encourage you guys to buy this pack. It comes with a bunch of cool plugins, and they're really fast. So let's say we want to put a filter on here. All you have to do is automate what I just did. If you guys don't know about automation, I guess I should talk about this, because when you're doing these filters, I don't think there's really another way besides automation to actually put these on here. So all you do is you click on this little guy. If you can see where my mouse is. Ooh. Click on that. What you want is filter. And that's why this one is so easy. If you actually had an EQ, you'd have to filter a bunch of different frequencies to make it sound like this. Then you click here on the track, this little down arrow. Oops, I'm sorry. Wait, did I? That's on there.
And just a clarification question
Yeah.
too. So is that turn on automation button that you hit at the top of the plugin, is that the same place for every plugin, or would that be just in this one?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
in Pro
for
Tools,
automating any one of your things.
Where it always is. So this is the down arrow that you're going to click on. My track was just a little bit small there. So click on that, go to the bottom of the list, you'll see one knob filter, click on that. And then you can just automate it however you want. So if you, this is not where I would ever use this plugin, but so maybe for an intro or something like that, it's kind of cool to bring it in, and then when it all finally climaxes, you hit them hard with the music or something. Or maybe the beginning of a verse, maybe it's just like bass, drums, and vocals, and you want the music to feel anticipated when it actually comes in. So these kinds of effects are really awesome. Sometimes you want like a really cool fade out to a song. You can also do it, the other way. So now, did anybody have questions about that online? I know automation isn't something that everybody knows about.
Automation, not specifically. One question that we do have from the internet is from Alex S., and he's wondering, do you add that distortion to all of the vocal tracks, including the copies of the same line, or just one?
Ooh, good question. Sometimes I will just do it to one. I think I normally find myself just doing it to one for clarity's sake. Like I can kind of overdo it on one if I want, and then kind of play with the volume of both of those tracks to make it sound a little more distorted or a little clearer. I find myself doing that more than anything. But sometimes you don't have a double, so you don't really have a choice but to put it on the main vocal. But yeah, that's a great question. Great question. So it comes with a bunch of these other plugins, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like a compressor, EQ stuff. I'm not going to get into that. Yes?
I haven't noticed the automation feature before. Can you use that on other plugins? Like bring in a delay or change even like the time on a delay? Or is it specific to the volumes?
Yeah,
or?
So let me go into the compressor that comes with Pro Tools really quick. Here's all the different things that you can automate.
Ah, okay, I saw that.
And so then, see if you can see these all these tiny little button, like black holes right there. That's what they light up when they're ready to be, when you have automation on them.
Great, thank you. Good tip.
Andrew, do you ever modulate your automations?
Like randomly?
No, I mean with intention. But is there ever a need in the genre that you work in, primarily rock, to modulate some of those automations?
So it's a little bit like faster, maybe,
or to give it life instead of a curve, and
Oh yeah. Sometimes like I'll do cool stuff with like pannings.
Yeah.
So they'll be really quick and
or get another source and to modulate that from another source.
Do you mean like?
I have a background more of electronic music, and
Yeah.
we're always modulating things with other things to bring in new dimensions, or
Yeah. Do you mean like if you sidechain a kick to a
something
synth?
like that?
Yeah. No, I don't really do that with automation. Really, I think that kind of when you sidechain stuff, I mean that kind of just
That
interacts
does it itself,
with
that
it.
pump.
Yeah, and that's all. It's like it's controlling, like say you do have the kick being modulated or the synth being modulated by the kick, it is controlling it, but I don't think it counts as automation exactly.
Okay.
So, but yeah, cool. You can also make that same effect if you want. I'll actually show you guys on a regular, just a regular EQ, because I know somebody at home is wondering about this. Change. Okay, so this is just another EQ. You can do this with any EQ. Take the frequency. So what we're going to do is just turn on the low pass filter, turn on really extreme. Here we are with the automation of that. And you can literally do you can do the exact same thing with this. So the other one has kind of like a resonance to it whenever you can choose if you want to do. If you want to do have a more extreme sound, you could the one knob is probably a better choice. But anyway, that's another thing. You can just do it like that. It's a really simple way to make the same effect with a different plugin. Okay.
Andrew, I'm wondering with automation, do you ever utilize kind of your own live moves as you're going through and perform them in,
Yes.
as opposed to just linearly or visually setting them up?
Yeah, this is cool because it has like one has like a pencil and you can like get really organic with it. Or there's also another mode in Pro Tools where I don't do this a lot. It's like, let me see. So the moves that I made during that, I would have to put that back. Yeah, so I don't know why you'd want it to sound like that, but there are like, if you're doing like maybe wah on guitar sometimes, like that's a really good thing because that's really a lot of feel with that. So it would be difficult to try to program that in and make it sound correct. Okay, another effect that I know a lot of people are using these days, like glitchy effects, vocal chops and glitches and repeats and all that stuff, and it's the easiest thing in the world to do. Here's my shortcut. So let's take, okay, we don't need this effect anymore. So let's say I want this to sound a little more like a robot. All you do is you take a tiny little section, and in Pro Tools you just hit Command D over and over, and so, yeah. So, and also if you don't like those little pops in there, you can just do your crossfades. Oops, I'm just deleting everything. Yeah. Oops. Get out of here. All right. And then another one, because that's not the only type of like glitchy effect that I've heard. You'll take, let's see. So let's say we just want a cool ending. You can just kind of take them off. Think of them as like, if you program drums or something, you would want them on the beat. That's not a cool one at all, but but that's the basic idea. And again, this would be something to use in like a gap. Let's say. Some of these are better used in areas like in gaps because you can actually hear them. If you notice with the first example I did when I played it back, it was almost impossible to even hear. So you would do something like there. And you can get really extreme with this. You can do a combination of like this plus the filter sweeps and like lo-fi, and you can get all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, you could turn up just a regular vocal part into some kind of crazy DJ like thing. So if you're into that, that's how you do it.
And I'm wondering if these are some of the effects and practices that you've used previously on some of the released albums. Excuse me, Jehovah's Witness wants to know, what effect did you use on the older A Day to Remember albums, Homesick for Those Who Have Heart, to get the huge roaring screams?
Well, that wasn't really any kind of effect or magic. I want to say this right now because a lot of people think that there's gonna be some kind of really weird thing that happens with like what I've showed you guys with the vocals, the singing, is what I do with everyone. There's not usually, I don't really stray much from that. I don't do some kind of crazy, like add a synth plus the vocal type thing or something weird that you could not even think of. It's literally the way the vocalist sounds. So like Jeremy on Homesick, Jeremy, from album to album, Jeremy will change the way he does his screams. And Homesick, they may prefer the way that sounds over the other ones or something. But the microphone was a U87. We actually recorded that into a UA2610, which is what we're using here. And I'm pretty sure that just went into a Rosetta 800 and then digitally into the computer. And that was it. There was no, there wasn't even compression, outboard compression or anything like that. It was just, that was it. And we layered the vocals. But here, for instance, in these gaps, whenever I do these big things, like that sounds kind of like one big, monstrous voice. But obviously, you can see on the screen that it's a bunch of different ones. And if we solo the unedited version, you can kind of hear jumbleness here. It's not as tight as that just sounds like, one person. A crazy person. So, I'm not saying Jeremy's crazy, come on. So anyway, this has, whenever you do vocals like this, I'll just layer like a regular one and like some low ones underneath it or something like that. But yeah, there's no magic trick to that. That's literally how, the vocal sounds. So let me get into some other weird stuff really quick. Somebody asked about, I think we may have mentioned wideners a little bit here and there, or somebody was talking about those, I don't remember. That's weird, okay. So Pro Tools comes with a widener. Oh, you can get a widener, there's a bunch of different brands, but they all basically do the same thing. But the generic term is widener. And where are you hiding at Pro Tools? Okay. I don't really use this much at all. Like maybe every once in a while. what the heck is it called? It's right in front of me. Here it is, stereo width. Sorry. I'm gonna make this a stereo track really quick. For some reason, Pro Tools doesn't have a way to make that plug-in stereo without, I just put Deverb on there and deactivated it, the mono to stereo version. If you run into this problem a lot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, all right, now this is stereo. All right, so I encourage you guys at home, put on some headphones, because otherwise you won't know what is going on right now. All right, so here's the regular vocal.
My thoughts are not my own, no! Where?
And then with a widener, I can't even tell because the stereo field is to my side. So let's just turn this off.
My thoughts are not my own, no! My thoughts are not my own, no!
So
where? Safe! Without in the tide!
So to you guys sitting here, that just sounds like the same. Like there's absolutely no difference. But when you're actually in the stereo field, you can hear it on the left and right. But to me, it's not as wide of a stereo as if like you actually double the vocal and pan it left and right.
My thoughts.
And when you double it, it makes it sound fuller too. So if you can do that, to me, that's a lot more preferred.
My thoughts are not my own, no! Where? Safe! Without in the tide!
So hopefully we're broadcasting in stereo, Susan. Susan,
you are
Susan,
broadcasting in stereo in my head right now.
Susan is afraid of screaming.
I don't know about. I'm afraid of live screaming.
She's been wincing.
She's wincing over there. I see her. I see her.
Wincing, I admit it.
She only listens to Beyonce.
Bouncy.
All right. Anyway, so that's widener, and then I want to show you guys something super weird. And if you don't have headphones, I want you to wear them right now. If you didn't already, put them on. Okay, so this is called, this is just inverting the phase on one side. And it is quite disorienting if you've never done this. But it can be a cool way to make things stand out in your mix. It might bother you. I kind of want one of you guys to actually listen to this when I do it, just so we can get a reaction from you. Okay, so all I did was literally copy one side.
No! Where? Safe!
Okay, so all I did was, that was us yesterday. Good job, everybody. All I did was copy one side identically and then invert the phase and pan them left and right. So, let's see here. When you're in a properly set up stereo field, this sounds quite bizarre.
No! Where? Safe!
This is actually...
No!
This actually doesn't sound right here through these.
No! Where? Safe!
So this is normally, just so you guys know, if you're listening at home, this is normally just a mono track. But just by inverting the phase on one side, this is what you get.
No! Where? Safe!
Yes, yeah.
I was wondering, with that particular effect, once it gets summed down to mono, did the two things being out of phase with each other, they do disappear?
Completely just.
Okay, I figured they had to.
Yeah. It literally just goes to nothing. That's another problem. So if your song is converted to mono, nobody will hear that one, like part of it. It'll just be gone. And I feel like something weird happened here. I'm gonna try to recreate this. But yeah, if this isn't actually coming across.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Okay, the example before wasn't right for some reason. I don't know, something wasn't panned. But okay, come on up here, yeah. I just want you to, because it doesn't only sound weird, it feels weird. So you have to put your head right in the center here. Let me play it normally for you. It's just so bizarre. Okay, so this is, yeah, make sure you're perfectly in the center, like your head is right there. So this is normal. Okay. Sounds pretty normal. And then this is with the phase inverted just on one side. So this is left, right. All right.
That is really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you almost feel it?
Yeah,
Like
you feel it like on the top right there. Like it just feels like it's kind of just.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
That probably would have helped.
He didn't have a microphone. But he is agreeing with me. He is
Yes,
agreeing.
I'm agreeing.
Which is all that matters.
But yeah, so he said he could feel it like on the outside of his ear. It's like really strange. So you can do that with any mono thing in your mix, but like Cameron said, when you do mix it down to mono, it disappears, which is also kind of cool. But whatever, just be aware of that. And it's like, you could have a completely stereo mix and then your guitar solo could have an inverted phase on one side and it just sounds like so bizarre, and it's kind of disturbing, isn't it?
Yeah, it felt like it wasn't there, but it was there.
Can you use the mic?
It kind of felt like it was there, but it wasn't at the same time. Like it was just kind of in the back side of everything.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. It was really
it's
weird.
so odd. So I encourage anybody at home, if you haven't tried that, try it because it's trippy. All right. Anyway, okay. Oh, here's another one. Really cool thing. When you do group vocals and maybe you didn't get enough takes or something like that, Antares makes, in their AVOX bundle, it's called Choir, which is really awesome, I think. It kind of makes, so let's do it without it.
No! We're safe!
And then with it.
No! We're safe!
Like, you can mess with it and make it sound bigger, and sometimes I'll just mix that in or just do it subtly, and it adds more of a big choir sound. I just wanted to make people aware of that because I've used that a bunch. I would never use it on a main vocal though. Usually just group vocals or group singing or something like that subtly, and it adds another dimension to it.
Well, still on Antares, Nick Squillante was asking if you use Antares Warm because he sees the brand inside of your DAW and just wondering if that's something you'd use on screams.
On screams? No, actually, I do not. I don't know if I've actually tried this before. Oh, yeah, I have tried this before. No, I don't use it on screams. It might be cool. It probably adds like a subtle distortion or something like that to it. I'm assuming there's like a tube right there. But anyway, another thing that I have used before, this is pretty cool. It's called Throat. And you can add airiness, like if you had breathiness, I mean, if you sang on like a not so good mic, maybe you did sing on like a 57 or something like that and the high end just wasn't there. Or they were off axis or something and you just didn't get that breathiness that you want, you could...
No! We're safe!
Well, you wouldn't use it on that, but this is good. I would have to dial this in, that obviously didn't work, but I just want people to be aware of these other tools. I just have other stuff that I want to get to, so I'm kind of just going through this quickly. But yeah, those are some really awesome tools for effects. Now, let's go into another session for some other sweet effects. Okay, so this is Antares again. It's called the Antares Harmonizer. So let's see. I'll take it off. I'll just play the vocal just how it is.
It always seemed to me that dreams are part reality.
So that's just a vocal by itself. And what I did was, well, I'll just play it so you can hear it.
It always seemed to me that dreams are part of reality. Puzzle piecing scenes, a coalescence of imagery.
So you're talking about image and heap?
That's like a very famous effect now, at least. I think it's like, I don't know if, can I say the name of that band on air right now?
What, you're talking about image and heap?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say that?
We are allowed to say that.
Okay.
Sweet. But yeah, that's like very recognizable sound.
That's what they use. And a lot of people think that it's a vocoder, and I'm going to get into vocoders in a second. But it is actually not. It's the Antares harmonizer. Maybe there's another version, but I'm pretty sure it's the Antares harmonizer. What it actually does is whatever notes I have down here, let me just open it up for you. You can have up to 4 different harmonies with the main vocal. So I'm pretty sure this is the.
It always seemed to me.
So this is the main vocal here.
Dreams are part of reality.
So I just took that out.
It always seemed to me.
And what we have here is just what I've programmed in the MIDI. So it takes my regular voice and it will pitch shift it to either this note. Well, it pitch shifts it to this note and this note and this note and this note at the same time and plays it. So whatever I do, I mean, I can, transpose this.
It always seemed to me that dreams are part.
And it still does that. So that's another cool effect that I use every once in a while. I like to throw a little delay on stuff like this. Simple, but it's only the voice, but it's the chords and the voice at the same time.
It always seemed to me that dreams are part of reality. Puzzle piecing scenes, a coalescence.
Whoop. All right, so this is the delay that I have on here. I love this delay. I just want to highlight it because I use this when I do like different kinds of things where you can really hear the actual character of the delay. And you can put a little bit of like detuning on it if you want.
It always seemed to me that dreams are part of reality.
Kind of, and that kind of, it gives it a mood, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just your typical like standard delay. So you can do like a ping pong delay where it goes back and forth.
It always seemed to me that dreams are part of reality.
You can filter the actual delay. You got your standard tools there, dry, wet, feedback. It has an analog thing where it kind of, and lo-fi where it degrades it a little bit as it plays. But that's a really cool delay. I just wanted to bring that up because I like it a lot. Yes?
What is the difference to you of using digital effects as opposed to rack, analog?
I actually don't really own any analog outboard effects in my studio. I've used like different pedals and stuff, and like, mainly guitar pedals. That's really the only like experience I have with outboard gear. But some of those are really cool, and I feel like you can get similar effects, or like as close as you can get, with these ones like H delay and stuff, like a tape delay simulation. I actually asked the same question to my good buddy Dan Corniff, who also is a producer, and I asked him specifically about tape delays, and he said he could tell the difference, but it was because of the sound of the hiss, that's where the difference came in, and I don't really care about the sound of the hiss, so like that's not something. It's not like I couldn't, it didn't sound as lo-fi or anything like that. It's just like some small thing. The hiss sounded different. So to me, I mean that's, and he's worked, like he built my compressors in my studio. Like he builds equipment. He's used tons of equipment. So like for years and years, So if anybody knows, he would know. So he's a fan of the in the box stuff, and I know a bunch of other producers are. So the other effect, really quick. I just want to make you guys aware of another cool effect. It's called, I call it bit crushing. I don't know if it's called bit crushing, but I call it bit crushing. So there you go. I don't know. I think this is the one. Oops. That's not it.
It always seemed to me the dreams puzzle piecing things.
So chiptune stuff like. So suddenly you have something that sounds like it's from Nintendo, original Nintendo. I mean, you can get really gross with it. And sometimes it's cool, like you can automate this stuff too. So maybe in an intro, it's like, something like that. So, but if you do use this, you want to turn the anti-alias all the way down. Otherwise, it just sounds like it's muffled. What? Almost like a filter. Yeah. So I use that a lot. I love that. Just on little parts here and there. Sometimes you run out of effects. You don't know what to do, but you want to do something special. This is a cool thing. And then an easy way to make something sound, this is called lo-fi, but I'm actually going to talk about lo-fi really quick. And it's not this. So, whoops. If you do want a really quick, I'm just going to touch on this for 1 second. Just a super quick lo-fi is, high pass, low pass. It's just like mainly mid-range coming through.
It always seemed to me the dreams are reality.
I mean, that's a typical, it's a really common effect, but if anybody didn't know, that's how you do it. There you go. All right, so another one is the vocoder, which is a lot different than the harmonizer. It sounds similar, but it is not the same. So I took my actual vocal that you've heard and totally transformed it into something else. I could change the chord progression or whatever if I wanted to, but this is what it is. So just you could totally change it. So like, if you ever hear artists like Daft Punk or anybody like that, like they're using vocoders a lot on their main vocals. And the synths that I'm using are just, like that come with Pro Tools, but you can literally, oops. So if you take like, for vocals, if you're gonna use a vocoder, the best sound is gonna be like, let's do In Your Face. It's like a hard lead sound, not like a slow pad or anything like that. All right. Anyway, and this is what I'm using as the vocoder. It's made by Waves, again. It's called the Morphoder. And this is how it works, basically. You have your carrier, which is the vocal that's going to be, the sound that's going to be the vocal. It's called the carrier. And that's what the hard lead would be, the carrier. And then the modulator would be the actual vocal or whatever you're using. Now, you could actually take a vocal sound and use a vocoder, and let's say your modulator is a vocal, and then your carrier could be the sound of a lawnmower or something like that. I don't have that set up as a demonstration, but you could put those together and make something insane. You could use a guitar, you could put it on drums. So suddenly you're like doing all these crazy sounding things. Now, something really similar to this that Pro Tools has also built in is the talk box. You can automate this however you want, but it's just in Pro Tools. So that's just our synth. So what's cool is sometimes you could literally like maybe put it on like an ah sound. Let's say something like that. What's cool is you could take that and just put that on the reverb of, say, a vocal or the reverb of a guitar or something like that. And so whenever you're playing, it sounds like a choir is following your main vocal, or a choir is following your guitar or something like that. So these are a bunch of different crazy effects. Maybe you guys have heard of all of these. I don't know, but there's so many different ways you can use these just with each other and stuff. Okay, so that's the end of effects. I hope you guys maybe learned something from effects. I really like effects. They're fun.
So fun.
I knew this section would be a little bit short, so I thought maybe we could take questions. And I also was thinking about getting into starting mixing a little bit. But if we do have any questions or comments or anything like that, we could do that right now.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, I had a little experience doing my last album with reverb specifically. When I was listening to it in my studio, the reverb that I had on my vocal tracks was probably set around 20-25% or something, and it sounded really good, but it was in a narrower field. And I took my mixes over to a friend who has a nice 5.1 surround studio. Mm-hmm. And he just pointed out, he said, your vocals don't sound as centered as they need to be. And by reducing the reverb just a little bit, it did dry out the track, but it actually narrowed it and made it more center specific. So what would you suggest as far as use of reverb on a vocal track? Because I know the more you add, the wider it becomes in the stereo field, and it can almost reduce the amount of it that you hear. Yeah, it's really easy to put too much reverb, because sometimes you'll put the reverb on and the setting will be like, in Pro Tools it's at 100%, so you hear tons of reverb, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, but obviously that's too much. So then you bring it down, and you're still your first impression was that reverb, all that reverb. So you bring it down to what's probably a good level, and you're like, I can't really hear that reverb. So then you turn it up too much. So what I suggest is before you listen to anything, put it at 0, go the other way. Okay. Add the reverb till you can just hear it, not so it's like, it's all in your perception of how you actually add. Yeah, because I think I started with it isolated, and it sounded really beautiful when the track was isolated. So I sat it in the mix, and it sounded good. Yeah. But then when I actually had time to process it. And sometimes it's cool. You have all the reverb on there, you're like, man, I like all this reverb. But you've listened to other things and everything's jumbled, So that really does happen. That's definitely a common problem. Cool, thanks. Yeah.
Question from Jero91 wants to know if you can please explain the routing for the harmonizer and vocoder. Okay, harmonizer, yeah, good question. Well, the harmonizer, you just put it on. It's like it's not an instrument, and neither is the morphoder. Neither of those are instruments. So you're going to put them on the tracks like a plugin. So let's just talk about the harmonizer for a second. It always seemed to me. Let's bring up the instrument guy right here. So all I have is this MIDI track that is literally like nothing. There's no There's no instrument on it. It's just MIDI only. So it's an instrument track, but it's just MIDI. So I just have that routed to the Harmony engine, channel 1, and that's it. So then you put in, just keep in mind when you're programming for it that it only does 4 harmonies. So if you do more than that, it's probably some weird things are gonna happen. It'll just randomly choose which notes to use instead of actually doing the thing that you want it to do. So that one's simple as long as you just have the MIDI track going to the harmonizer. And then the morphoder is, the way I have this set up, there might be a few different ways to actually set this up, but I have, let's see. Okay, this is actually kind of a complex routing situation, now that I'm thinking about it. I have here in the sends, I have the vocal sent out, and in Pro Tools, if you click the pre-post fader, it will also send it whether or not you have the track muted. So this is sending it out to the morphoder. And it's the right channel, which, since it's the vocal, it's the modulator. So I have the modulator selected as the right channel. And then, well, this was, I'm sorry, okay, so this was a stereo bus, but I only selected the right channel, just so we're clear. Let me show you. Yeah, there we go. So this is the bus, but I only selected the right channel to send out to that. And then the carrier, which is the left channel, I just have that selected going out to the morphoder left. And the morphoder is on just an auxiliary bus by itself. I have some effects on it. You don't have to have those effects. But the synths that are in the background are just on a completely separate track. It has nothing to do with the... That's all that the morphoder is. This other stuff is an extra track. It has nothing to do with the actual thing. So hopefully that made sense. I know it's kind of complicated, but that's how it's routed.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what the what they were looking for. You know, to be honest with you, I mean, it's a matrix inside of that system, but you know, you send things every which way.
Yeah, but that's how you get it to work. You might have to watch that section a few times after you buy the course. But anyway,
I like it.
So yeah, I was thinking we could either wrap up early, or I could jump into mixing.
I'd say feel free to just go ahead and just jump into mixing.
Okay. All right, cool. So all questions good? People understand stuff? Does anybody have effects that they like, actually, that I didn't mention? Like any, yeah, go ahead.
I use the Isotope vinyl plugin.
Oh yeah, I use that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of vintagey sounding production that I do, and it just works really great. It's super intuitive, and it has...
And it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
It's
you can just download
vinyl.
it,
Yeah.
and it plugs into a lot of different DAWs, so that's a great one.
It kind of makes your, whatever you send it through, sound like it's been on a record. You can add static or the actual electrical noise, or pops and clicks and the warped, if the CD is warped or scratches, you can add all that stuff. What year the record is from, how many rotations per minute, all that stuff. So yeah, that's a cool effect too. Isotope vinyl, that is a free plugin. I think it might be a VST though. Yeah. All right. Anyway, if you have a VST adapter, you can use it with Pro Tools. VST to RTAS adapter. All right.
So I think I might know your answer to this one based on some comments earlier, but Lauren S. or Lawrence in the chat room was saying, based on the software available and how smooth the software runs, What do you recommend using to record in general, guitars, vocals, etc.? A Mac or a custom-built PC of the same price?
That's
Good question.
Wait, a custom-built PC of the same price?
I think that's the gosher there. I mean, is that, you know, where's the value here in utilizing a Mac system or a equivalent value PC?
Yeah, I personally use PC because of its upgradability and the cost effectiveness of it. If you do have a studio and you're upgrading your stuff a lot, a computer is something that you're upgrading a lot. You're not really upgrading your compressors a lot. You might add equipment or whatever, but you're not like, you don't have to get a new chip inside this or something like that. If you're gonna, you could spend like $6,000 on a Mac, or spend like $1,200 and get the same specs on a PC. So saying same price, the price is the difference. So it works just as well. Like, I have ran into a few small problems as I was using this. It may or may not have been live, I don't remember, but I've been using this and I've tracked albums on Macs and stuff, and they all have problems, but I think the problems come from the actual plugins and software that are being used. Like, some plugins are buggy, and that's what causes Pro Tools to lock up, not really Windows or Mac. And I've had one virus in the history of my entire recording career, and I've been recording for like 10 years or more. So I'd go with PC. Also, PC developers for plugins release a lot of cool VSTs for PC that are not available on Mac. Plus, I actually have been talking about there's one, and there's a few different shortcuts on a PC that are not on a Mac, because when you hit Alt, it highlights the menu at the top. Just different things like that. So, yeah, either one is great. You can upgrade a PC a lot easier though, because you can replace components in it.
Either one is great if you have the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have the money, but whatever. All right. Let me just make sure I did all this. Oh, that Harmony engine, I'm not going to go back to it, but it also has a feature where it does automatic harmonies. You have to like put in the key, but it will actually do the harmonies for you. I would never do that, but maybe you want to for a specific reason. Okay, so mixing. We're just going to talk for a little bit about this because I think the break is coming up here soonish. But I want to talk about the basics of mixing. This is going to be easy if you've done all the other stuff correctly. If you're vocalist, if you don't have weird problems with your room, you're trying to get rid of strange reverb sounds, or your mic sounds weird because you had it too close to the wall, or your padding was causing strange reflections, or your vocalist was off to the side, if your punch-ins were wrong, if you didn't correct the pitch, you might be distracted because you don't like the way it sounds. All of those things are factors when you're mixing vocals, because it's obvious that you'll have to figure out ways to work around that stuff. But if everything is right at the source, like we're doing the compression here and the EQs, and you have the right setting on the microphone, etc., that stuff was already clean while it was coming in. So that's your best situation. Your source material is clean from the start. So you're doing less, things are in the right direction, then you only have to do small things. What we're actually doing isn't like anything crazy or major, but I will talk about different scenarios here of mixing. So, okay, how to mix vocals. You got to think of it like this. There's a bunch of different vocal elements. There's the main vocal, verse vocal, chorus vocal. We went over this before in a previous section. Backup vocals, the ahs, screams, group chanting, group singing, special affected vocals, anything else you can think of. You have to take all this stuff into consideration. This is what you can expect from this section. What I want to do is I'm going to target certain problems that you guys probably have and offer solutions for them. Because sometimes, for instance, you didn't track the way we tracked. And I'm going to talk about that because I know people don't have this kind of equipment. But I'm going to actually talk about how you can still make a really similar sound without this stuff. This is what I want you guys to also understand. Presets. I don't want people to tune in and think that I'm just going to put presets up and then you copy the presets and then you dial it in and then it's going to work exactly the same for you. That's not how it works. Every mix is different. Every vocalist is different. Every song, every genre, they have all their nuances. They have all the things that set them apart from each other. So what you need to know, last point here, is what to listen for so you can mix anything. So it doesn't matter what equipment you're on. I mean, it matters to a certain extent. But as long as you know what to listen for, you know what direction to go. For instance, a vocalist is tracking, and you hear that their voice sounds a little bit muffled. Well, hold on. Do you go for the EQ, or do you check out the vocalist to see if they're actually on axis of the microphone? So what you need to know is you have this option and you have that option. Which one is correct? And I'm going to talk about like how to know, like that's what to do, but you have to know what to do depending on the situation. Because if you see that they're off axis, you don't touch this. You actually fix it over there. So that's just a small example of like things that we'll get into of like specific situations of how to tackle certain things. And sometimes they were off axis and then they left and they're on tour and you can't do anything about it. I'll show you what kind of stuff you can do to fix that stuff. Okay, where do you start? Mixing vocals doesn't start with vocals. It starts with the actual song. When I am mixing an album, I mute the vocals. They throw me off. They are a part of the song, but they need to stand out a little bit differently than the rest of the song. So what I do is I mute the vocals. I make a huge sounding song, as big as I can, as tight as I can. Sometimes I'll even, if I have the vocals in there, maybe they're just turned down really quiet just for reference. But I'll actually check the mix and reference the mix on tons of stereos and stuff before I even touch the vocals. Because if that's not right, your vocal is not going to be right. And if you do mess with your vocal, and then you change the music, whatever you did for the vocal will probably have to change anyway. So be happy with your mix. Be happy with your music first. That's where you start. So mix with the vocals in the mix. Think of it as think of mixing as a whole. So after you finish mixing the music, that's whenever you actually get to the vocals and you want to. Well, hold on. Let me start over. You don't want to mix the vocals by themselves. Some people will actually maybe solo a vocal to mix it or put reverb on it or something like that. But no one's ever going to hear it like that. You have to actually think of it, in the mix. Don't. If anyone's ever gotten drum tones or anything like that, it's the exact same thing. You are dialing in your kick or something like that, and then you put it in the mix. It sounds really muddy and like doesn't cut through or anything like that. That's what matters, and that's how you got to think of these vocals. So, if in the past you've been soloing your vocal to EQ it or something like that, because you think you're really getting down to it, just trying to find the problem, you're not finding the problem. You're making a problem. So, I'm sure some people out there have done that. So. You also have to think, what do you want the vocals to do for this track? Sometimes there are certain genres where the vocals do kind of take a back seat. But we're actually going to, and those are usually, no offense, but less popular styles. But we're going to teach you how to mix for more popular styles of music. but we're also going to talk about the mixing for the singing and screaming, and some, I don't know if I actually put that down. Oh, here we go. Singing, screaming, and we're also going to mix just regular singing. The Who Needs Sleep track, we'll go through that and mix those vocals and stuff. Be obsessed. I know this sounds really weird, but you have to be willing to try anything as many times as it takes to get it right. It can be really frustrating, but you have to just stay on it and listen to it 1,000 times and a bunch of different things. Sometimes what I like to do is get a mix that I like, listen to it, then wait one day, then go back to it, and then make changes. So, and that goes with mixing and vocals, but especially vocals. If your vocals aren't sitting right in your mix, I'm gonna try to help with those specific situations for you guys. So, compression, let's talk about compression. I don't know if everyone knows exactly about compression. Sometimes people are just turning the knobs and they have no idea what they're doing or why, but I think it's important for you to understand. What is it for? Now, it has a few different functions, because think of how we did it when we were tracking this. When we were actually using this, these compressors, while we were tracking vocals, we were only using these to control the dynamics for the input. That's not what we're doing now. Now we're mixing. Now we're trying to get a boldness out of the compressor. We're trying to get an overall evenness. Sometimes it will help with pronunciation. Sometimes if you compress it correctly, and I'll show you how to do this, you can get more punchiness out of the vocals, especially with like the heavier music and stuff. So how does it work? That's a big question. I can explain that, but it will take a while. Okay, so the basics of a compressor, just so you understand. I guess this is important, so everybody knows. A lot of people don't like to admit when they don't know something. So I'll just go ahead and cover this for whoever doesn't know. How does it actually work? Okay, so think of it like this. Whenever I think of a complicated device like a compressor or something like that, you see a bunch of knobs. Forget about the knobs. Forget about what a compressor is. Let's go to the beginning when the first person created a compressor. Why did they create it? That's what you have to think. That's how you can understand. It's like you're deconstructing it. So let's say you're recording vocals. You don't know about compressors. They don't exist yet, okay? So you're recording vocals and you're noticing these peaks and you're like, man, it would be great if I could control these. You know, if someone hits a certain volume, hey Jeff, could you turn this down every time they, get over this, say 10 dB? And it's like, Jeff is like, yeah, sure. So that's kind of what a compressor does. It's like Jeff, what he does. He'll just turn it down. It gets to a certain volume, and Jeff turns it down. And I'm like, Jeff doesn't exist, just so you guys know. There's no Jeff. And he's the compressor. So and then Jeff's like, well, how fast do you want me to turn it down after they actually hit the note? I'm like, that's a good question. And I say, you know what? Right away. Let's say as soon as it hits 10 dB, I want you to turn it down right away. That is attack. So as soon as it hits 10 dB, he turns it down immediately. So you're like, you're turning it down too quick. You turn it down a little bit later. So that would be adjusting the time of the attack. So when it actually is engaged is the attack. Whenever it reaches the 10 dB, that's the threshold of the compressor. So you're telling a machine to do these things automatically, and that's what it's doing. So Jeff also says, well, I turned it down. Do you want me to turn it back up? And yeah, I do. I want you to turn it back up, and that is the release. So when you think of it like that, you can really understand these different concepts. Jeff turns it down when it gets to 10 dB, that's the threshold. How fast does he turn it down? That's the attack. When does he turn it back up? That's the release. So when you understand that about compression,
you can do a lot of different things. Now, sometimes it is just turning knobs. You can know all this information and dial something in that logically makes sense and sounds terrible. So, and then you have the ratio, which is a little more complicated. I don't really need to explain that right now, but we will explain that as long as you understand the basic concept of compression. When do you use it? I use it all the time on every vocal part, always. Sometimes on really quiet vocals, they might get just like the tiniest, littlest bit of compression, but other than that, every vocal will get some kind of compression. So, everybody understand compression? Susan?
Yes, Andrew. I totally understand compression now.
Jeff in a box.
Jeff in a box. So, cool.
So we have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, cool. EQs. Functions of EQs. That's fine. I'll just talk about EQs and we can wrap it up. Obviously, functions of EQs. You can add. Oh, tell me. I made a cool little. Okay, I made a cool little chart for you guys. Actually, Ryan did, but we'll get to that in a little bit later. It's to help you out with EQs. So EQs can add. You can add and take away cool stuff with EQs. Here, we obviously just use this EQ to clean up the signal, to take out that rumbly low end that we don't really need. You can also add airiness to a vocal easily. You can add presence. You can give it more body. You can take the body out a little bit. You can make it blend in with the mix better. You can make it stand out. You can make it really pop just by using an EQ. And what's the difference? That means, what's the difference between every EQ? Now, every EQ has, like, whenever I use the EQ that comes with Pro Tools, it kind of has a really neutral sound. There's not really anything like special about it. But then when I'll use like the SSL EQ, and it's the same with the physical SSL EQs, they have like a harmonic distortion feature on them, and you can add brightness to something that you couldn't have added brightness to otherwise, because the harmonic distortion is actually adding frequencies to the signal that never existed. So, and we're going to talk about how to use that really well later. But how are we doing on time?
We're good. Why don't we do some Q&A, and then we will go to our next break. So you guys think about any questions you might have. I have one here from Grant McDonald, who says, for mixing, do you have a basic session template that you work to?
I have a routed template where it's just all my buses and keeping everything organized in my session. But no, I don't have a template.
Okay.
That's interesting. I mean, in a similar line, Brazen Lane also wants to know, how do you keep the same mixed sound across multiple Pro Tools sessions when recording an album?
That's a great question. I'll demonstrate that when we come back, actually. I don't have that in my notes, but I do. I'm going to write that down as soon as we go to break, and I will talk about that.
Keep it back for you.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
You guys have any questions? You guys all right? All right. Question from Suro 1968. How much compression to vocal do you usually use or recommend?
Compression on vocals?
Yeah.
Well, we're really going to get into that.
Okay, cool.
Like
well,
these questions are probably just all going to be answered like
in mixing
really well. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can find something about the effects here. How about when panning? Going back to panning the effects wide. Essentially, Mark Zero was asking, when you record multiple takes, do you prefer to pan them wide or keep them more centered?
If I do multiple takes, usually, let's take a chorus for example. I'll usually do 3 for the main vocal and then 2 or more for backups. And the main vocal will be center, and then there will be 2 on the sides that are the same vocal, and they'll be turned down maybe about 8 dB. And then the backup vocals will also they'll be panned left and right. So it looks like this.
But it's a hard panning, essentially. You're going 100% or 50 or what?
I can't like bend my fingers that way, but yeah. It's like
you look like a Vulcan. It's awesome. Great. And so I guess one of the last ones about plugins specifically, Molitoth, I almost says monolith there. Molitoth said some plugins convert mono to stereo, and is setting the panning to 0 or less than 100 and 100 more preferred, and why? I hope I asked that correctly. Did you understand that?
Is it?
Let me rephrase this. Is setting the panning to 0 or 100 and 100 preferred, and why? Far and far, I guess. Mono and stereo.
Yeah. That's right. Usually the stereo is preferred, because usually an effect like that has some kind of thing like the reverb is in stereo, and I love stereo stuff, so yes, I leave it.
So default to stereo, even if you're working with an initial mono track, just work with the stereo output.
Sometimes that's kind of how you add a stereoscape to something that's kind of just centered.
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. I would have butchered that question.
I did butcher that question.
No, we got an answer. That's great.
It made sense.
Well, perfect.
Took him a second.
Thank you. We've just basically wrapped with the vocal effects and mix prep, and we basically got a intro into the next section here, which is all about mixing. Do you have, I know you went kind of over the basics in there, but do you have any things that you're going to want to have us try and keep our minds on into this next section? Any kind of highlights that we can look for?
Yes, I'm going to answer as many questions as possible, because this is where everybody's questions are. Also, be prepared to just be continuing this section. Just so you know, the next thing is de-essing. So we're going to continue with the major mixing tools. So we're really just kind of taking a short break here and just transitioning straight into the same thing. But we're going to get deep into this mixing, and we're going to try to solve all your problems if we can.
All right, well, I just want to let everyone know we have a thank you card for you on Facebook.
What?
You heard me. So if you go to creativelive.com, I'm sorry, don't go to creativelive.com. Go to facebook.com/creativelive. That is where you find our Facebook page. Give us a like there if you guys have not already. And if you scroll down, there's a post that has Andrew's photo. So go ahead and leave him any comments or anything that you guys want to let him know so that he can go back and read it later.
Awesome. Andrew, we have a few comments from the internet, which are, all gleaming in glory. Matt Bishop says, "Let me intern for you, Andrew. Recording music like you is my dream."
I doubt he's ever heard that before. Let me intern with you, have you? All right, well, if you guys have decided that you want to upgrade to Anytime Access, you're actually running out of time, we do offer a discounted price when we are live. So the way that it works is if you want to upgrade to Anytime Access, there is a buy button beneath the screen that you're watching. This course is $99 for 2 days of all of Andrew's mind and all of his talent and all of his experience. If you decided that you want to own this and upgrade, then I suggest that you do it now, because it is $79 right now. It will go up in price after today. So if you've decided to do that, now's the time. And we will be back here in 15 minutes for the final segment.